I promise you, we are almost done with the boring stuff. And in just a bit, we are going to experiment with some more fun things you can do in CSS, such as adding images and backgrounds and creating some cool styles with some cool properties. But there are a few essential things that we still have to get through, unfortunately, but it's going to greatly help you and make you understand what's really going on, because you're going to have some certain cases where you're going to be confused and you're not sure why your CSS is behaving the way it is. And these are some things that, again, we just have to go through. And one of them is the sizes of pixels and ems and rems. So these units, what are these units and how are they behaving? So let me quickly show you an example here. We have a section here. I just gave it a class of text section because it has only a paragraph, but I also created a div here with another paragraph. Okay, so typically we've seen pixels, and that's like most common. Pixels are everywhere. When they get the new iPhone gets announced, they tell you how many pixels per inch they have. So everybody knows pixels. So let's take that class and let me kind of show you something. Let's put the class here. Oops, there we go. Okay, so if I set a font size of this to 20 pixels, well, everything is going to be 20 pixels. So all the paragraphs are going to have 20 pixels, and we can take a look at that if we open up with F12, this developer tools, and we click on one of these paragraphs. As you can see here, it says font size is 20 pixels. Okay, very cool. Now, the interesting thing is I can go maybe inside this div and set this paragraph as well. Okay, so we can say text section div, so we can get this div, and I can say font size of 30 pixels in here. So that grows this to 30 pixels. Okay, well, cool. As you can see, okay, well, we have 30 now here. Okay, so what's the problem with this? Well, there are a few problems with this, even though this might seem super simple. The problem is that accessibility-wise, this not might be that ideal. And I want to quickly show you this here, even though I have an accessibility section coming up later in the course. This pixel that is set here is fixed. It cannot be modified. It's set in stone. So maybe if a user wants to change the size of their font in the browser because they might not see your text very well, maybe this text, they cannot see it very well. Well, if they go to settings here and they want to change the font size, which I'm not sure where it is, it's here, font size. If I change this to small maybe, well, nothing changes. Very small. Oops. Very big. As you can see, nothing gets affected, and that can be a problem. And especially for people who use different font sizes, and they might want to have the text very easy to read. I need one for speaking too because I cannot speak. So accessibility wise, pixels is not that great of an idea. Also, it's not a great idea for responsive design because you have a fixed set of value here. You have 20 and 30. So maybe if we go on mobile, so if we go smaller like this, we have to do some tricks to change each and every value to match a mobile screen font. So we might have to modify this section and this section to get the results we want. Again, we're gonna get into that in later a bit when we cover media queries, which basically just allows you to change all your elements based on the size of the screen. So basically when you go to mobile, you can change the font sizes, you can change the styles, the colors, and everything else. So pixels make it a bit tricky because you have to keep changing them because they're fixed. So another alternative that we have is ems. So ems units are written like this. Let me quickly show you. Let's get rid of everything. I'm gonna say font size 1em. All right, hit save. And by default, that's gonna be 16 pixels. And there is actually a secret little bastard here that we don't know, but HTML sets the pixel size, and HTML, by the way, is the root element of our website here. So this one, it gets set by default to a font size of 16 pixels, okay? We cannot see this, but this is happening kind of behind the scenes. And as you can see, if I save it, nothing really changes. So I'm gonna comment this out, and I didn't show you how you can comment things out in CSS, so let me show you now. You just basically add a slash and a star sign, and everything you wrap inside this slash star sign and then star sign slash basically doesn't get executed in your code. Okay, so if I want to wrap this, the code is not gonna work anymore. So take a look. Okay, but this is actually the default. So if I change this to something like 10, nothing happens, okay? So let's go back, let's get rid of this. All right, so it's 16 pixels, very cool. So if I want something like 24, I can set it to 1.5, right? And then we get 25 pixels, there we go. Okay, now the cool thing is, if I did that calculation correct, you do 16 times 1.5 and then you get excuse myself, excuse me. All right, okay, we good, it's 24, it's 24. Okay, so basically you multiply everything by the element that you have, so the parent element. So M's basically take a look at the parent element, but I want to show you where it gets a bit tricky. If I go here and I want to say, maybe I want to have a font size, and I'm going to say 1.5. Okay, it's going to be the same font size, this one, which is kind of useless to add, to be honest, because we already defined it up here. But I just want to show you the difference. Okay, so basically I'm going to add it to this p tag, so in the div and this p tag. If I add a 1.5 m, well, why is this bigger now? What M does is it takes a look at the parent element. So it takes a look at the parent element and it multiplies it. And then this parent element takes a look at its parent element and then multiplies it. So take a look what happens. We added 1.5 M to this, and it's gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna multiply it by my parent element's font size. So it's gonna take a look at the section and it's gonna be like, oh, you're 1.5. Okay, 1.5 times 1.5 times what's the parent of this element? It's the body. And what's the body's parent? It's HTML, which has the default size of 16. So this is what is basically happening. You add 16 times 1.5 because it looks at the root element. And then down here it adds 16 times 1.5, so the parent, and then this element that we gave it here, okay? Now, check this out, this is kind of interesting. What if we add a margin top to this div? Let's add 1M, all right? How is that calculated? Well, let's look at the div. As you can see, the font size is 36 pixels and the margin top is 36 pixels. But what happens if I change this again to something like 2M? Well, then it's 72. So now you have to say 16 times 1.5 times 1.5 times 2. All right, so hopefully this is getting clear. You just keep adding more and more and you're duplicating more. So now it takes into consideration this, and this times this. All right, so wherever you have defined a font size, you're gonna have to keep multiplying, and this is gonna get quite crazy. And as you can see, it makes things not fun. Okay, I never use this, by the way, so you can catch a breath right now. You can sit back, you can watch this, enjoy it, and knowing that you're almost never gonna use this. But I want to make it even weirder for you. If you want to break this, you can just add a font size. If you set a pixel font size, then it doesn't inherit it anymore. Okay, but if we change this to a font size like this, and then we add an M unit, so margin top, let's do 2 M's again. Now it's gonna inherit only this one. We're not gonna be doing the multiplications anymore, because if we set a pixel here, it's gonna destroy that inheritance. It's not gonna take a look anymore at the parent div and the parent of the parents div. So now it just looks at, okay, it's 20 pixel times 2, okay? Oh my goodness, this is so confusing. Okay, don't worry, because we have a new unit here to the rescue. We have something called rem. And the only difference between the rem and the m is that we are not going to inherit from parent to parent to parent. We are only going to inherit from one single one, which is the root parent, which is this HTML element. So when we set a rem, it's only going to take a look at this HTML font size. Okay, so let me show you how this clears everything up so simply. We can go to the text section, and maybe I want this to have 16 pixels. So I can set a font size of 1 rem. If I hit enter, we can take a look. This has 16. So if I want 24, I put 1.5. Okay, so now it's 24. Okay, but maybe on this one, I want to change it to something bigger. Or maybe accidentally I put it the same size, 1.5 rem. It doesn't matter because this one exclusively looks at the HTML and this one still exclusively looks at the HTML, so only at the root. We don't have to worry about taking a look where this thing is nested, where is it here, is it there, it doesn't matter. You're always gonna know that whatever rem you put here is always gonna be relative to the font size of the HTML, which makes it actually super easy. You know why? Because we can modify this HTML. So if I remove this HTML, I can set a specific font size here so that this rem calculation is going to be easier, because right now 1.5 rem is kind of tricky to calculate, right? You have to say, okay, so what's 16 times 1.5? So that can get a bit annoying. So what we can do is set a percentage here, which is 62.5, I believe 5%, like this, which is going to give us exactly, 1 rem is going to be exactly 10 pixels, as you can see here. 1.5 is exactly going to be 15 pixels. So this way we can style everything the way we want. I can come here, if I want this to be 16 pixels, I can just say 1.6 rem, boom, we have 16. Maybe on this div I want 24, I can say 2.4 rem. Boom, everything is the way I want. There's no weird things happening with inheritance. Nothing is going crazy. And the best part is I still have my accessibility here. So if I want to change the font size of this to something bigger, like large, it's going to affect it. It's going to work perfectly fine, very small. As you can see, things work perfectly. And this is going to be extremely easy to also make the text responsive. So when we resize the screen, we don't even have to add those media queries that we're going to see later on. We can just mess around with these in a specific way. Again, when we're going to get to the media responsive websites, we can make this responsive very easily. Okay, so highly recommend you to use rem. Highly recommend you to avoid pixels and ems. Ems might come into play, and even pixels, but very rarely. I really want you to put a heavy focus on using rems. So just set your HTML font size to 62.5, and that way it's very easy to add the numbers here, because 1 is going to be 10, so 1.5 is going to be 16, 2.4 is going to be 24. Okay, so those are rems, ems, and pixels. Wow, awesome. Okay, can we do some fun stuff now?